Good evening. I am Commissioner Griffin, Chair of the Policy Committee for the Rochester Board of Education. It is now 5 5:42, 5:32. I'm sorry, 5:32 on Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. And this is the Code of Conduct public hearing. The Rochester Board of Education's Code of Conduct Policy 1400 and Educational Law and Regulation requires the Board of Conduct at least one public hearing before the board can vote on any revisions to the policy. The purpose of this hearing is to gather input from district students, parents, staff, and the community regarding the proposed changes to the Code of Conduct. The Rochester City School District strives to provide a safe and productive learning environment that will help students become successful and responsible citizens. Our goal is to ensure that all students have the opportunity to participate fully in their education without disruption. The Code of Conduct is written to promote a positive learning environment for all students. It spells out expectations for the responsible behavior of all partners in the school community, including students, all district staff, in addition to parents, guardians, and visitors to the schools. As required by the Code of Conduct and Education Law and Regulation, the Code of Conduct Committee, which includes district students, parents, staff, and community members, reviewed the policy to provide the recommended revisions. All information related to the proposed changes to the Code of Conduct can be found in the public hearing agenda on Board Docs and at www.rcsdk12.org/public hearings. The Code of Conduct is slated to be viewed by the Board during April 9th, 2024 Policy Committee meeting. At this time, there are no speakers for tonight. This concludes the Rochester Board of Education's Code of Conduct public hearing. Thank you and have a good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the HC Committee of the Whole meeting. I am Commissioner Malloy. Welcome. It's going to be a quick meeting, I hope, tonight. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Motion?
We have, I don't know who was first there, but all in favor?
Second.
Aye. All right, moving on. We don't have any speakers this evening. We're going to jump right into our agenda. I think we need to approve, oh, here we go. Do we need to approve this? Okay. If we could approve and accept the minutes from January 23rd, 2024, the HC Committee of the Whole meeting, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Griffin. I almost said commotion, sorry. Can I get a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Simmons. All in favor? Aye. All right. Our first discussion topic tonight is just to review, we're not voting on it this evening, we're simply going to review the 2024-2025 school year calendar. If you could open that up, if you've had a chance to look through that, look over it. I will open it up in just a moment to my peers for any questions that you might have. I know I have a question regarding the calendar. So I will direct this at our superintendent. I noticed on here, have we ever considered giving our students Eid al-Fitr? Because many of our students are Muslim and many districts are opting to include this holiday on their calendars. And I know we're crunched for time, but to be a bit more culturally responsive to the communities that we represent, was that ever discussed?
Yeah, I think any opportunity to discuss any holidays that are inclusive are part of the conversation. One of our difficulties has been, and I think this is happening really across the state, is fitting the contractual days within September to end of June, right? Because you don't have they're not considered aidable days unless they're there, and then everything else comes from conversations. This is a mutually agreed upon calendar with the unions as well to have some voice to make sure that we're able to fit all of these days in there. So there are some opportunities if time comes where contractual days we could look at starting prior to Labor Day, right? But they're not aidable days, but they would count towards contract days. We would have to look at that as options, but yet to come to an agreement with the union.
And we can't see students prior to Labor Day anyway. That's
Correct.
Those aren't
because no
aidable
aidable
days.
days.
We lose our foundation aid if.
Yep,
on
they
those
would.
days.
They don't count towards the 180-day requirement.
Oh, go ahead.
Because I remember former superintendent, we did have a day that students were in school before Labor Day. So did we not get aided for that day?
So that would count as, so if you look at the calendar, you see that it says teacher days 185, student days 183. We have to have, by law, have 180 days. You have some snow days built in there. We could count teacher contract days prior to September. So that could count as a school contract teacher day towards the 185. It's not an aidable day towards the 180 that we need from state ed.
How many snow days do we have allocated normally?
So right now, we have 3 built into this calendar right now. The other option we have, which the state has given, is the opportunity to do remote learning to count as instructional days when you get to a point of weather as well. So those are things that after you hit 3 days, do you start to have some discussions around, do you use those as weather days, or do you start to take away from other breaks to make sure that you're meeting the 180 days?
And I know that a lot of districts do have 3 snow days kind of allocated into their schedules already. But I'm wondering if we wanted to be more inclusive and include holidays like Eid on our schedule, what if we went with only 2 snow days? Have we always used those snow days year after year?
It all depends. Last year, we had to use a couple of them, right? We had the water main breaks that are coming. Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but I'm going to have to be calling potentially a date tomorrow because of the water situation that we have right now. So, it's not always weather. It could be anything that's causing the closure. So those days are safety nets. But once again, this calendar comes to a calendar committee that the Chief of Human Capital runs with our union representatives to come to an agreement on what the calendar should be for the year.
Okay, and I appreciate all the constraints, but just wanted to bring it up on record so
This-
that we have that discussion.
There are more and more holidays that are coming. I think from a state perspective, there is conversation about how do you become inclusive and fit all of these days in between a September to June timeline.
Yeah, and I think that what we're starting to see too across the state is that we're pushing more and more past, well, Regents examinations are later and later each year. So we're going further and further into June. So hopefully we won't have to ever go into July, but we'll see. All right, I'd like to open it up to my colleagues. If you had any comments regarding the calendar, any concerns or questions that you'd like to ask, I'll start to my right with Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. You brought up, Commissioner Malloy, the Regents exams, and I did notice they were later in June. And looking at our current graduation rates and just the instructional needs of our students, how we can make sure they're best prepared, because that is kind of late and it puts them in a position that may not be the best. So just wondering if there's opportunity to, or if that's New York State though, right? So then I guess what our plan will be to ensure that they're as best prepared as possible.
Those days are set by the New York State Regents, right, for examination and assessments across all 3 through 8 Regents exams. The later time in the year, does give a little bit more instructional time to make sure that we're providing review, instruction. I know a lot of times towards the end of the year, teachers will spend that time kind of making sure that they go through the material that's been over the course of the year to review and prepare students. As you know, APs fall earlier, and that also poses a little bit of a problem too, because you do the AP exam, you have to get all the material in there as well. So every exams kind of pose unique challenges throughout, but the end of the year seems to be, at least more ample instructional time and prepare time.
So we may be able to optimize on that opportunity. And then my second and last question actually is around September. Just wanting to touch on the fact that we are coming off of course, the holiday, and then we have the superintendent conference days, which I'm sure are used to get people prepared. And then the first day of school kicks in, and it's on a Thursday, and then the next day's Friday, and then they're off again. And people say, why don't we just start on Monday? And so because that's a question that comes up all the time, I wanted to kind of bring that here.
Yeah, so superintendent's conference days count as aidable days. They count as school days. It's once again, if you wanted to start school on the 9th, then the 5th and 6th become additional lost instructional days, and you're still then fitting those times in, right? So then you have to look at your winter break. Do you shorten your winter break? This year, the winter break and the holidays fall at an interesting time. They're midweek, so it's kind of, then you're coming back on, I heard the same thing on Thursday when you come back, or a Friday after break, to say, why are we coming back on a Thursday and Friday after New Year, right? So it's never an ideal. We're always going to be in this time where we have these short weeks that we're experiencing, and the response to those, why can't you just extend it? Well, you just got to find the time to squeeze this all together. It's like Tetris. It's like a jigsaw.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Simmons. Thank you, Superintendent. I'm going to go just to my left, Commissioner Griffin.
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions? Commissioner Santiago, no. Commissioner Patterson, State Monitor, President Elliott, any other questions? Do we have another commissioner on Zoom tonight? I didn't see if we had anyone on our Zoom. Okay. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I believe we're going to be voting on this at the business meeting this month. So next week, we'll be voting on this. Thank you so much. And, I do want to add, I do like on the calendar that we have 2 full weeks in December. So we get a lot during that time, which happens, every 10 years or so? Yeah. So we can't complain there. All right, moving on to our next agenda item. I am happy to welcome our chief, Dr. Miller, who will be presenting tonight on our staffing and recruitment update, recruitment and effectiveness. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner Malloy, Superintendent Peluso, Independent Monitor Alcia, members of the board, President Elliott. This evening, we're here to talk about Teach Rochester and staff effectiveness. As a reminder, the Office of Human Capital works to recruit, develop, support, and retain the most effective, diverse staff. And so this evening, we're going to highlight vacancies at the current moment. We're going to highlight our Teach Rochester effort, which we're sharing this evening, and also the professional performance review process that we're going to be rolling out this spring. Both of those items are items that really come from some of the feedback from prior human capital meetings, so I thank the board for their feedback and emphasis. When we look at our vacancies as of March 14th, 2024, you can see them illustrated on this slide. When I reported back to the board in January, we had about 164 vacancies, and so here in March, we're up at about 193. That represents about a 3.2% vacancy rate at the current moment in time, which we seek to have all of our positions filled. We don't want to rest with the vacancies that we have, but a 3% vacancy rate in an organization our size is pretty standard in terms of normal turnover. And one of the things that we are certainly challenged with as an organization are the positions that are more entry level. Those who work or start in entry-level positions are very mobile in our labor market right now. And so there's a constant turnover in positions. So I would share that could include our clerical positions, food service, paraprofessionals, custodial, and even some transportation positions. And so we are consistently challenged in terms of the work that we do relative to recruiting and hiring for those positions. But certainly, our classroom positions are ones that have been of greater concern for us, particularly in the area of special education and in ESL. And so on this heat map, again, as of March 14th, you see that we are still struggling with special education, not surprisingly, because those that are certified, those that are teachers, are finding their way into classrooms locally, regionally, and otherwise. The heat map on this next slide is something that I've shared before, and I updated some of the language on there to make it a little bit clearer, but this recruitment heat map, it helps us better understand the current shortages that we experience across our region and across the state. It serves as a visual representation of that, and it allows us to assess our ability to be able to fill positions by finding fitting candidates by those tenure areas or those position areas. And so certainly additional efforts are needed to help us buttress and fill the positions that are those that are most challenging, like special education and ESL. One of the things I've been pretty consistent about talking about is this slide, and that it's this idea that our work is to ensure the recruitment and retention of the most effective, diverse staff. And as a school district, as a community, everything that we do is either attracting or discouraging staff to come to Rochester, or it's attracting or discouraging our current staff in terms of retention. And so we need to be super intentional and super strategic about the kinds of things that we're doing to focus on mindsets, processes, and systems to change the culture to ensure that we can be attractive and also encourage people to stay. And so one of the things that we're launching this evening to share with the board and with our community is a community call to action that we are calling Teach Rochester. This is a multifaceted initiative aimed at transforming the teaching profession in the Rochester City School District. It encompasses various strategies and partnerships designed to recruit, retain, and support diverse and high-quality teaching workforce that reflects our students in the classrooms. We talk about the desire to better mirror our staff to that of our students. And so we're working to do that. Through Teach Rochester, collaboration with community organizations, educational institutions, and stakeholders, Teach Rochester seeks to elevate the status of teaching in Rochester, improve teacher readiness for day one and their effectiveness overall, and to ensure equitable access for our students to educators that are fully certified. It serves as a comprehensive effort to address the critical need for a talented and diverse workforce, particularly with teachers in our classrooms. to ensure inclusive environments, both for our students and our staff. And so Teach Rochester, this call to action that we're talking about this evening, involves the engagement of our community by creating those partnerships, implementing strategies at the local level, and mobilizing our community to help us address the critical shortages that we're seeing. The emphasis on community involvement, collaboration, collective action reflects our call to action so that we can come together as a community to support the things that we need to change. And so I owe a great deal of thanks to our staff, our team, our leaders in the district, but also the Racial Equity Action and Leadership team and the RAISE team that's locally here in Rochester, because they have been influential in helping us to think through this vision and this strategy of effort. And so on this slide, you see the vision for Teach Rochester. The overall frame of Teach Rochester as a comprehensive initiative is focused on recruiting, retaining, and expanding diversity in the Rochester City School District. Ultimately, that will result in better outcomes for our students. And so it involves partnering across our city. It involves expanding our teacher pipelines so that we can bring teachers to the Rochester City School District from elsewhere, from colleges, from other states and other regions and other nations and territories. And it ensures that we're focused on improving day one readiness by influencing institutes of higher education so that they are better preparing teachers to work in the Rochester City School District. It also seeks to ensure that we are ensuring equity and access so that our students are in classrooms with fully qualified and fully certified teachers. Another component of this effort is to really focus on ways we can support teachers through recognition and leadership opportunities so that teachers can expand their reach and expand their opportunity to have an influence over others, and ultimately building a diversity in our staff for long-term change. And so with the call to action, the first component of that is a lever within Teach Rochester is to focus on recruitment ambassadors and building up folks in our community that can help us with recruitment. And so with the recruitment ambassador program, we're seeking community members who will join us as volunteers, who will leverage their expertise and networks to help us with recruitment and retention, particularly from diverse backgrounds. And this program aims to build a talented and diverse workforce by engaging alumni and individuals who are connected to historically Black colleges and universities and Hispanic-serving institutions. Through strategic recruitment efforts and collaboration with community partners, the district aims to reflect the diversity of its student population. And so we started in January by calling on our own staff through a census opportunity and to seek volunteers from staff who are connected and who can leverage their connections to help the school district. And so now here in March, we're focused on a community call to action. And so this evening, we're going to be working with media. We have a press release, we have a web page and a survey so that we can work with our community to come forward and share with us the richness that they might offer in helping us with this initiative and this work. In April, we'll use the information that we glean from the surveys and from our community to determine what richness we do have. We may discover some things that we just didn't know. And then we want to work in April and May to bring people together who are interested in really being involved and to work together with them. On this slide, you see, and I don't expect you to read the whole thing, but you see the range of options that we are working to connect with community on, because there's a lot of things that we could use assistance with, and you can see from the range on this slide the 15 different areas where we are looking to engage alumni and community members to assist us with our recruitment efforts. That could include networking, referrals, mentoring, advocacy, and partnership building. Through this survey, we hope to build a network of individuals from our community who are committed to promoting the mission of the RCSD and attracting diverse and talented candidates to join our team. The other lever of Teach Rochester is to establish and build community support systems. Now, we don't know yet what each of those community support systems might look like. This is where we want to actually work with community. We want to work with the Office of Community Engagement and others to help us put those community support systems in place. I previously shared that if we're going to recruit people from elsewhere, we've got to have a system of support and a network where we're going to put our hands around people to welcome them, to support them, and to ensure that they can be successful in our community, but also that they're connected and networked in with people who care about them. Because the better that people are networked in and connected, the more likely they are to stay and continue working in the Rochester City School District. And so when we look at the research, these are 5 areas that the research says we should be focused on, and we want to work with our community to figure out what those support systems are. We know that the richness of our community can help us put our collective arms around our educators. And so we'll be working with the recruitment ambassadors and others in our community to assist us with developing that vision further. Another lever of Teach Rochester is the establishment of affinity groups. And I've talked about affinity groups probably for about 16 months now. It's about as long as it took us to get these up and running in terms of doing our research, developing a steering committee, developing a handbook, and ensuring that we were ready to go. And so last week we launched affinity groups in terms of letting staff in the district know that we are launching affinity groups and to ask for their involvement and their proposals for the establishment of different affinity groups. Affinity groups are also known as employee resource groups, and these groups are designed to foster a sense of belonging, support, and empowerment among our diverse staff members. Affinity groups are voluntary. They are employee-led groups that provide a space for individuals with shared identities, backgrounds, or interests to come together to build community, and to advocate for each other. Whether based on race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, or any other dimension of diversity, affinity groups offer a platform for open dialogue, professional development, and mutual support. Our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is at the heart of what we're trying to do by promoting this initiative. And so on April 11th, we will be having an interest meeting for individuals who want to learn more about affinity groups. That's for current staff. And you can see on this slide on the right-hand box, you can see some of the proposals we've already received. And we anticipate receiving more, and those will be reviewed by the steering committee. And you can see just even on this slide how there may be some opportunities for people that want to establish different affinity groups to come together and create those. So we are launching that, and we're very excited about the opportunity to expand and create these spaces and places for our staff to connect with each other and to feel supported. Another lever of Teach Rochester is our teacher pipelines. These are crucial in our eyes, in the eyes of Teach Rochester, because they provide a sustainable and continuous flow of potential teachers to the Rochester City School District. And these are individuals who are either working on or finalizing their certification. These pipelines help us to address our staffing shortages and turnover challenges, and they ensure that steady supply of better prepared, diverse, and committed educators to serve students in Rochester. By expanding and strengthening our teacher pipelines, Teach Rochester aims to create a robust and resilient teaching workforce that can meet the evolving needs of our district. And so on this slide, you can see with the different colleges that we have established programs with these institutes of higher education that fit different kinds of needs, whether it's individuals who already have a bachelor's degree, individuals who might be change of career, individuals who need to work on a bachelor's degree. We've worked to establish pipelines and opportunities for our own staff to grow to become a teacher, but also to attract those college students to the Rochester City School District. And this has been a journey. This slide shows that over the last 18 months, that this has been an effort to do this work. And we've had the space to be able to do it, to build these partnerships, and to create expanded opportunities to ensure that we are building those pipelines to the Rochester City School District. And this strategy and commitment assists us with being able to bring teachers to the Rochester City School District who are ready and who are certified. So that is our Teach Rochester initiative. One of the other things that the board, I think it was Commissioner Simmons actually challenged at the last meeting in January, we were talking about psychological safety and felt accountability. And
Chief Miller, if I
Yes.
could just interrupt for just a
Yeah,
moment.
please.
Before we go on to this next section, I'm wondering if I can perhaps open up for commissioners to ask some questions just on the first
Sure.
half. I know I have just a couple questions to start us off, and I'm not sure if anyone else does as well. Can we go back to slide? Let's see here. Slide number 6, when we're looking at our critical shortages. And I know we've seen this a lot in the news as of late, but when I see critical shortages in our bilingual teachers and our ESL teachers, and then to look at our, at-risk groups for dropping out, have we seen some success in teacher recruitment so far for those areas with some of the programs that we've started to institute with those pipeline programs?
Yeah, well, we've seen some growth and opportunity. Many of these programs are just getting off the ground, and so it depends on the specific program, but some have been able to start off with a handful of candidates. Others have as many as 20, and we know that with each successive year, we can grow those programs further. So our approach is to do as many different things as we can, and all of those things add up into something larger. So we are not only trying to connect with all of our local IHEs, but others across the nation. And so that's something that we're working on.
Yeah, and I know pipeline programs with universities and other programs are pretty critical. I'm wondering, do we have anything in place pipeline-wise within the district to kind of look at some of the people who are already working in our schools at places like RIA? I know we have a lot of translators there and people who are in education in their home countries prior to coming to the United States. Are we doing anything to help recruit those individuals, to help them get certified, for instance, to become teachers? That just seems like a natural fit for our district, and I'm wondering if that's been looked into.
Yeah, so we've worked to develop pipelines for our paras and TAs to access and to become teachers, but as well, we've been very successful in identifying people, particularly folks that are bilingual, who we've worked with to develop teacher certification action plans. So you may recall that we had upwards of almost 300 people that came through that program over the last 2 years, with the result of them earning the certification, a very high percentage. I can provide some updated data on
Okay,
that.
that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think you talked about partnerships within the city, and I'm wondering, are we partnering, do those partnerships include partnerships with at the county level as well as with City Hall to address housing, like to attract more people to the city? I know that there are a lot of programs that exist out there, like Teacher Next Door, Cop Next Door, those types of programs, and I'm wondering if that has been part of our recruitment at all, or our strategy.
So the sky's the limit on the things we could attempt to do, right? We don't have all the answers for that yet. We want to work with our community to figure that out, and it's not really only for the school district, I think, to your point, to be part of this conversation. There are many people that want to help us and that want to be involved in that conversation. And so that will be the point of the work over the next few months, to really work to engage our community. And it's not even work that is the human capital office alone. It's how we partner within our organization and with those other entities within our community.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to open it up just to my colleagues. I'll start at the other end of the dais this time. Commissioner Patterson?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Santiago? None. President Elliott?
Yes, thank you. So, a couple of things. One is with regard to when we do recruit teachers and other staff, we don't always know how to care for them. And that's been, and I can recall going to visit some principals who are leaving the district, and people didn't care that they left. And so, if we recruit, we have to make sure that we are supporting them, or they will leave. And that has happened quite often. We just have not known how to care for the ones that we get. And plus, if they're good, and we know that if they're good, other districts are gonna try to recruit them. And so we haven't done a good job. We just let them go. And I've talked to them, some of them, and that's the response that they gave me. So I'll put that on the table. And then, of course, our systems does not help to make it easy for those that we recruit to be within our district. And then we've got to change our reputation, putting more stories out there that are positive about our district. We've had, differences with unions, the unions and the boards, and so you got all of that we have to contend with. And, how do we navigate that so that our recruitment efforts are effective? So I'll just leave that out there, but my question has to do with the absentee rate. What is our absentee rate for our district overall? I mean, I can be, teachers, and I know that if there are bus drivers who are absent, that impacts, getting our kids in school on time. But how, in addition to the fact that we've got to recruit, we also have to ensure that, our staff are coming to school, coming to the school or the district, whatever department that they're in, on a regular basis. And I'd be interested in knowing what our absentee rate is, because that impacts also, the classrooms and other areas that makes it difficult to be effective in our district. So we could put that in the question log. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Elliott. And then Commissioner Simmons.
Yeah, I just want to, again, bring light. I may be echoing sentiments already expressed, but the critical shortages, that really concerns me, and I know that we're making efforts, but, when I look at that and I look at the core populations impacted, as Commissioner Malloy mentioned, and I think of I'm wondering how many teachers are certificated, how are we impacting that, making sure we have high quality. We talk about high quality educators in the classroom, and a lot of these positions that are missing are things that impact us at the instructional core. And so when we think about how our students are doing, I have to look at the human capital piece to better understand where we are with missing links, if you will. So that concerns me, because I know, you kind of acknowledge that this is standard as far as, we have 193, and for an organization of our size, but these are 193 critical positions. And so when we're talking about children's education, I just can't look at that as standard. It's something that has to happen. And so I'm interested to see some of the strategies and plans really spelled out a little more explicitly. I'm happy to see the Teach Rochester affinity groups and efforts to create pipelines, things of that nature. And I know when I looked at the affinity groups, I see the women BIPOC leaders and Black educators and leadership and things of that nature. And oftentimes we talk about we need, in districts that are primarily 90% Black and brown, we say, and we need to have representation. We talk about that. And I'm recognizing, similar to what President Elliott mentioned, that sometimes we do have representation, but somehow they don't stay. And we go, oh, you know what, it's the last in, first out situation, which is very real. But sometimes it's not that. And I would love to get an idea of how many of our leaders have been up for tenure and haven't gotten it, and for, what was that about? Especially if they don't have issues that are impacting their tenure, right? And so we start to lose these educators, and as President Elliott said, off to other districts, and then we're still at a shortage. So I would just like to know more about what that looks like, and I'll have to see what is, maybe get with general counsel to better understand what I can learn, but I can't wait to hear what you have to say about psychological safety in the workplace.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Commissioner Griffin?
I guess the only thing I would capitalize on as we're looking out to recruit people from different colleges, the black colleges or any colleges around the United States, I think that it's also important to listen to children that want to become teachers themselves and rear them in the position where they could come back and be instrumental into our district. Many times I go into the schools and I ask them what they would like to be. And a lot of kids want to be teachers, but they lose sight and lose focus because we're not giving them that direction or showing them that they can be teachers within our district. So kids start young and knowing what they really want to be, and I think it would be influential if those kids that want to be teachers, that we stand by them and give them the opportunity to be teachers and come back and work in our district. We have to pay attention to things like that as well. But thank you.
And here on that, Commissioner Griffin. I totally support that. All right, I guess you can continue the presentation now. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you for those points. Thank you. So staff effectiveness is something that we talk about, right? If we're going to focus on ensuring the best, right, for our students, we have to have a combination of psychological safety and felt accountability. And they're crucial in any school district because they create an environment where our staff feels safe to take risks, share ideas, and collaborate without fear of judgment or reprisal. And this, when we get in that mix, that careful spot where psychological safety and felt accountability are in that careful zone of the learning zone, this fosters innovation, continuous improvement, and a sense of ownership over outcomes, ultimately leading to higher staff morale, engagement, and effectiveness. And that's what we seek to do. And so when I raise this idea, Commissioner Simmons, you asked, well, what's our solution to that? What are you going to do? And we talked about, well, we'll plant a flag and we'll figure it out. So here is what we want to share in terms of focusing on the development of a professional performance review process to ensure that we can establish some protocols to look at the effectiveness of our staff and to establish a framework for performance review that creates a collaborative triage team of leaders with varied perspectives and expertise. Together, the principal and others who work with the principal in leadership, working with the Office of Human Capital, working with their school chief, discussing the probationary educators that are in their school multiple times a year to assist and ensure that we shift the focus from the individual principal having to shoulder all of that on their own to actually working with and supporting the principal in that work. By creating that triage team, this ensures that challenges are addressed comprehensively and support is provided effectively. When we do things as a team and when we empower our leaders with support, we can help them to make better decisions, informed decisions, and to assist and help because our principals need help. And we need to use the resources that we have in the district to ensure that we're focused on the growth of our staff and the growth of our educators. This has the added bonus that throughout an educator's probationary period, there'll be multiple conversations about what their strengths and what their areas of perhaps growth opportunity are, and to assist principals with coming up with strategies or next steps that can assist in the growth of that educator while they're still in their probationary period. And in turn, that will help us to make more informed tenure decisions which in turn will help raise the bar on what we expect in the teaching profession in the Rochester City School District. And so largely, it's to ensure that we have a growth focus, that we're collaborative in our decision-making, that we empower our leaders to make decisions, that we are working as an organization through continuous improvement, that there are feedback loops that are supportive, both in working with principals, but also in working with those educators, and that we're making better informed tenure decisions. All of that helps to raise the bar, while at the same time focusing on psychological safety and felt accountability. None of that replaces the APPR system. It's an internal structure to assist our leaders in how they work with their staff and how we provide them better support to do the difficult jobs that they have. And so that is what we're rolling out in terms of a professional performance review process. And it's a process that exists across New York State, across the country, in many school districts. This isn't a practice that we just invented on our own, but it's looking at best practices and it's bringing it to our school district.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions, but I'm sure my colleagues probably have a few. I'll start again on this end. Commissioner Griffin, do you have anything that you'd like to add or anything that you'd like to ask about?
What is the performance outcome from the teacher's mentor? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, I forgot. What is the performance of the teacher's mentor program?
So our Career in Teaching program is a partnership that we have with the Rochester Teachers Association to ensure that every new educator, new teacher in the district has a mentor. And they work with their assigned mentees. They provide coaching, guidance, support, phone calls. They're that support, but they also evaluate and they provide feedback and they coach. And they're a thought partner with our new teachers. The program has been noted. It's one of the great things we do in our school district to support educators as they're starting out, and it's really a model across the nation and one that's been in existence for our district for many years. So in terms of data about the effectiveness of the program, I can provide that in the board log.
Thank you. My last question. We did talk about how you're working with like United Negro College Fund or other different colleges to recruit teachers. I guess the concern is because we're seeing less and less people going into being teachers. Do we know are they being proactive in making their teaching curriculum or people coming into the school, making it more like recruiting them and giving them more incentives to being teachers, I guess, is a better question, because we know that the rate of people going in to be teachers as a career has gone down. So what kind of feedback are you getting from these organizations, from higher education, in reference to the people coming in actually choosing teaching as a career?
I think there's a variety of things that we've done and that other institutions have done. I think there's more effort and advocacy and attention needed on this problem. I don't think, well, we've established a bunch of partnerships with institutes of higher education within our local community. I think we still have work to do to influence how they prepare potential teachers to work in the Rochester City School District, but also the kinds of things that we put in place. So through our programs, we've been able to incentivize in certain areas where we assist with tuition reimbursement for individuals that maybe are going back to school to become a teacher. But there's definitely more that could be done. And there's a lot of unique things that other school districts are doing. I can offer a couple examples, but one is to have housing for new teachers. And in exchange for working in the school district, you have a subsidized apartment and you're living with other new educators. There's a school district that actually had a condo building, and with each year that you taught in the district, you then built in your equity ownership of that condo. There are other districts, when they're going to attract and recruit out of state at historically black colleges and universities, that they're offering not only that tuition assistance, but maybe moving allowance expenses to help them move, right, to the new community, and other kinds of things to assist them. And some of this is that effort that we're going to put our hands around to assist with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so that if people come to Rochester and they need an apartment, or they want to know where to go to church or where to get hair done, all of those things, that we're providing support networks to assist them.
Okay, thank you. I do appreciate what you're saying, Chris, and I appreciate our initiative, because I know we are really striving to pull people in, especially of color, to come into our school systems and help with our children. I guess we are the ones pushing for that initiative, but the colleges are just letting us come in to make that initiative to their students that come in. Is that what you're saying? More so?
I certainly I appreciate the partnerships that we've built with all of
Right.
these institutes of higher education,
Right.
but I think at the state level, there's a need for more advocacy and change on this, because
Right.
there are not people going into the field or
Right.
seeking that out.
Right.
And as much as we can do job development,
Right.
workforce development, and encourage people,
Right,
we need help.
right, okay. That's fair. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your questions, Commissioner Griffin. I'm going to go to my right, to the audience's left, to Commissioner Simmons.
This is getting complicated.
I know, right?
I was looking around. Thank you for your presentation. Wondering, I noticed again, back on the psychological safety, we talked about feedback loops and things of that nature. And when we consider the Rochester City School District, we know this is a ginormous system, right? And so wondering, similar to when you looked at the critical shortages, how we have a heat map to kind of identify, these are some areas that need attention, they need support, something needs to change. Is that applied to these when we talk about feedback? Because, you know, maybe there's an area within the system that we recognize as red, as far as people saying, hey, I feel a lot of anxiety, you know, and this is, you know, and they're sharing this information. How do you identify the areas that may need some additional focus, and not just individuals, but like is that making sense? Am I hitting on it, right?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. There are three primary things that keep people where they work, right? Their leader, their
Right.
boss, right? That's number one. Number two, the culture of where they work, and is it vibrant and positive, and is it supportive? And three, and is it inclusive, right? And then three, do they have autonomies in their position, their job, right? Are they micromanaged, right?
Right.
So the leader, right, is the single biggest influence over all of those things. And so our focus, we've had a focus for the last couple of years on leadership development and the development of our leaders. And we're continuing that work, and we need to talk about these things more. But the performance review process will help to ensure and uplift our leaders, because they're going to have the support of not only their supervisor, but a team that are going to help them.
Okay. Are you doing this type of assessment in the schools as well as central office? Because we recognize that it does start with the leader. For myself personally, I cannot stand to be micromanaged. Please leave me alone and let me breathe and do what I gotta do. It is like the worst, most anxiety-inducing experience a person can have, especially when you come in with a skill. Like, let me exercise my skill and stop trying to voodoo down me into where you want me to be. I hate that kind of mess. I hate that for anybody. Some people love it though, maybe, I don't know. I do not like micromanagement. It would not work for me. And I recognize when I'm serving, when I have staff, that I need to adjust my leadership style sometimes depending on the staff member. You know, you want to be malleable to the needs of the people that serve. And when you have leaders in position that don't understand that, or just don't care about it, this is my boat, my show, and I'm going to do what I want to do and get on or get off, and it starts to have this impact on staff members that is not necessarily positive. And my point is, it can impact the system system, as you know, your HR, and the outcomes of that system. So when you ask all of the great questions that you just hit on, do you feel heard? Do you feel like you are being micromanaged? Is this happening to you? When you ask these questions, be it central office, inside a school building, over at food distribution, wherever it may be, and you start to get this feedback from staff, and do you have something in place where you can identify the trends and identify where some of these things are occurring so that leaders are aware that your people are not well and they need something to change to be better? You know, do we have that going on?
I think that on some levels in different spaces and places, right, we do some surveys, right? But I think we have opportunities to do more in terms of surveys. I've talked before about stay interviews, right? That leaders meet with the people that they value the most on their team and learn from them what's keeping them there, or what do they need, right? So I think there's a number of things that we need to do to have this conversation and to influence, right? Leadership is difficult. It's constant work. It's constant work to support people. And as leaders, you know, some days we have bad days, some days we have good days, right? And we've got to keep working toward those good days, and we've got to own the people that we lead. We got to support them. We got to care for them. We've got to be attentive to their growth. And so every leader in this organization has to have a mindset like that, right? And it's really hard to do that daily and do it really well. And we need to share what is working well in terms of leadership, folks that are doing that well, and help lift up leaders who maybe need some growth in those areas. So yes, this process will help us with identifying some of those trends.
Okay, we can revisit it at some point. I'd love to hear like some things that happen to address those concerns when they happen. Because if all my people went out on sick leave and they're constantly taking off, and is it the stressors from the job, or am I contributing to that? So yeah, but we can definitely revisit that. Thank you for your response. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. And moving down the line, President Elliott.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. So I would just add on to what Commissioner Simmons just said and take it from another angle. There's also groups out there that are into power moves. And we have to also take that into consideration. There are people who don't do the work here because of power. And there are groups that this becomes about power, not about our children. And so we have to also acknowledge that in our buildings as well. You know, when we have, you know, people who don't do effective lesson plans, for example, power, right? And so because they don't necessarily have to do it. So we have to look at that part of it as well in terms of, you know, ensuring that our staff are effective. And so I just wanted to add to that. The other question that I also have is the slide, I don't know what's psychological safety versus felt accountability. So if you could explain that more to me in terms of our environment, what does that mean? I've never seen the term felt accountability, so that's new to me.
Yeah, so it's this idea, right, that there are things that we can do as leaders where if we are super focused on making everybody feel good, right, but not helping to grow people, not giving people feedback, right, you're going to have people that are real happy and in a comfort zone, maybe coasting, right? There's no pressure, there's no feedback, right? They're happy, they're content. Versus somebody that's on the opposite end, micromanaging, they're on top of you every moment, they're giving you feedback nonstop, right? They don't support you, right? That can result in a very high level of felt accountability. And when you're in both of those spaces, whether it's making everybody just feel great or making it difficult for people, you're gonna lose people, or you're not gonna have growth, or you're certainly not gonna meet the needs of students. And so the idea is trying to figure out that zone, that careful place of providing that psychological safety along with felt accountability so that people are growing, they're moving forward, they're getting good feedback, they're being supported, they're focused on their students. And at times, applying a little bit more pressure or feedback can help, right, move people further. We don't grow unless we're uncomfortable, right? So you don't want to be uncomfortable all the time, but you want to help people to move in that direction. And so it's finding that space where you're providing support, you're providing growth and feedback, and you're moving your staff in a positive direction for students. And I think, you know, I think if you all, right, if we all think about prior bosses we've had, right, we can think about people that did those things and where they fell, right? I think we've all got examples, right? This is why it's hard work. We all, as leaders, have to look at how we're achieving this and what we're doing to provide that.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Do you have any other questions, President Elliott?
I still don't understand it, but I probably wasn't connected. I'll connect with you or put it in the question log later.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from commissioners? I know, anyone else? Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Miller, for this presentation, and looking forward to just some more information and the data as we gather it and see how that helps us better impact our academic outcomes through this recruitment and retention. All right, so that was the last official agenda item. However, we do have, if you refresh your pages, you're going to see that we have a resolution that has been added to our agenda. And I'm going to, in just a moment, ask for a motion to waive the requirements of the 48-hour submission rule required in our board bylaws, policy 2300. And this is for resolution 667. And I just want to share that this is a gift acceptance. So this is not costing our district anything, and it's related to the upcoming, opportunity of a lifetime for our staff and our students. And I'm hoping because of this, we have more students who one day choose the field of physics or become astronomers and truly start gazing up at the stars. We know we have the eclipse coming up, and this resolution is a gift acceptance from Rochester Museum and Science Center. They have donated, I believe, 32,000 eclipse glasses with an estimated value of over $80,000. And they're providing these specialty eclipse lenses or glasses so that our students can safely view the eclipse. And we know our students are off that day. We needed to bypass or waive the requirements of the 48-hour submission here, simply so that we can get this done and we can get these glasses distributed to all of our students in a timely manner. We didn't want to have to wait until the business meeting next week to approve this. So if I could get a motion. A motion?
Second.
Oh, okay. Motion by, I heard from Commissioner Simmons, and a second to my left from Commissioner Griffin. Thank you very much. If there are any other comments at this time regarding this gift, but thank you so much to the Museum and Science Center for this very generous donation and opportunity for our students. Are there any questions? Oh, actually, we were just motioning to waive. I'm sorry, my bad.
I was about to ask.
My bad.
I do have a comment.
I'm learning still, too. So we have our motion on the floor to waive. All in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, now I need a motion to accept, a motion for 667 to this gift acceptance. A motion by President Elliott, second by Commissioner Griffin. Do I have that correct? Any questions or comments on this resolution?
And just to comment, again, I'd like to also say, thank you for that, that donation. That was very kind of them to do so, the Rochester Museum of Science, so thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else want to make a comment on this? Commissioner Santiago? No, all good? Anyone else?
No, just yay, that's
Yay.
exciting. It is worth the wonderful gift for our students and educators. It's going to be an exciting time in Rochester, so yes.
It really is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and We want our scholars to know that you can't use sunglasses to look at the eclipse. You need to wear these specialty eclipse glasses. So that makes this gift ever, more important. So thank you so much to the Museum and Science Center. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, Vice President LeBron, would you like to vote on this as well? We've just voted for Resolution 667.
No, because I legit just logged on and I did not hear any of the conversation. Sorry, I'm trying to turn the camera on.
Okay.
I didn't hear any of the conversation, and so I apologize, but I'm just getting off and I have to finish some work unfortunately, for a project tomorrow, so
Okay, no worries.
I'm gonna say no for this one, but I'm trying to log into Board Docs to see where you are all at. Thank you, though.
Thank you and welcome. All right, without further ado, that is the end of our HR meeting, HC meeting. If I can get a motion,
So
well,
moved.
actually, before that, we have a board member survey that we do need to complete. So if we could all complete the board meeting survey. Do I need a motion to end the meeting?
Yep,
We do.
so moved.
Okay, so we have a motion by this is silly, I'm tired. By President Elliott, second by Commissioner Simmons. All in favor? Aye. Thank you so much. Have a nice night.
Good evening. I'm Commissioner James Patterson, the Audit Chairperson. I'd like to call the Audit Committee meeting to the whole to order. We need to recess an executive session, which is closed to the public, to discuss matters permitted by Section 105 of the Open Meetings Law, or to receive advice and counsel from the General Counsel. Can I have a motion to go into executive session? By President Elliott, and seconded by
Griffin?
Doesn't matter.
Commissioner Loy. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, I'd like to welcome myself and my colleagues back from executive session. Bullet 3, speakers addressing the audit agenda. There are no speakers on the agenda for this evening. And next, I'd like to review and acceptance of the minutes. Let's see, we have minutes from the audit committee of the whole. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. We have minutes from the audit, I'm sorry, President Elliott, just a minute. We have minutes from the audit committee of the whole on December 5th, 2023. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from the December 5th meeting? And that's going to be a motion by President Elliott.
Second.
Second by Commissioners Santiago. Any comments, questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Before we get into the next agenda item, I'd like to read something into the minutes with the hopefulness that we'll be able to speak relative to this later and possibly introduce a resolution for consideration. Let's see. It's a letter that I wrote, dear esteemed colleagues. I trust this letter finds you well. It is with a sense of urgency and responsibility that I address you today regarding recent developments that I have brought to light concerning allegations surrounding the utilization of the American Rescue Act, ARPA funding within the Rochester School District, particularly concerning the Community Resource Collaborative, CRC. In light of these allegations, and until further clarification can be obtained, I, Commissioner James L. Patterson, am formally requesting an immediate suspension of all ARPA funding allocated to the CRC if we do have that relationship. It is imperative that we take swift and decisive action to ensure transparency, accountability, and proper utilization of public funds and federal funds. Furthermore, in order to thoroughly investigate these allegations and address any potential misconduct, I am also requesting that a forensic audit be conducted by an external independent vendor. This audit should encompass a comprehensive examination of all contracts, organizations, programs, and vendors associated with the following names, who we know that everyone is considered innocent until proven guilty.
Commissioner,
Do not mention people's names.
Commissioner, I would just caution, I would just caution against a public allegation for, as you said, for things that are unproven. I think you can make your point without necessarily using names. That is my recommendation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So without naming any names, including but not limited to the following programs: Pathways to Peace, Title I federal funding, My Brother's Keeper, and Expanded Learning. This audit must be conducted with the utmost diligence, impartiality, and adherence to legal and ethical standards. It should aim to uncover any irregularities, discrepancies, or improprieties in the allocation, disbursement, and utilization of funds, with a focus on ensuring compliance with all relevant laws, regulations, and district policies. As stewards, commissioners, as stewards of public trust and accountability, it is incumbent upon us to uphold the highest standards of integrity and transparency in the administration of public funds. The results of this forensic audit will not only serve to address the current concerns, but also to strengthen our oversight mechanisms and safeguard the interests of our students, families, and community. I urge each of you to support this request for a forensic audit, as it is essential in maintaining public trust, ensuring fiscal responsibility, and upholding the integrity of our district. Let us demonstrate our unwavering commitment to accountability and transparency by taking decisive action in response to these serious allegations. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I look forward to your support and cooperation in this critical endeavor. Once again, I'm hoping that I can introduce a resolution at some point in time for consideration, and that we have some discussion as a committee, or as a board, I should say, with regard to this letter. Thank you.
I put my hand up because I don't know, since you opened up the floor, because you put it out there, if you're going to be calling on commissioners to respond to what you just said.
Well, I wasn't going to have any discussion at this point in time unless it's warranted.
Yeah, I want to put on record
Well, just a
too,
minute,
as
just a minute, please,
someone
just a
who
minute,
is
please.
impacted by,
I'm,
as someone who is impacted
I am,
by
I
the
am,
CRC
I haven't
scandal.
acknowledged you from the floor. Please, let
So
me, go ahead.
the chair does have the right to acknowledge speakers. I will say that, again, Robert's rules encourages discussion, but the chair does have the right to control the meeting and acknowledge speakers on the issues. And once acknowledged, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay, so General Counsel, is that advisable? I'm looking for your advisement on this right now. Should we-
I think so. I mean, you made a lengthy statement. So I think if the commissioners want to have a very kind of brief response, again, I would give the same caution. If you're talking about something that is a subject of either litigation or criminal activity, I would caution about anyone making any statements at this point publicly. But if a commissioner had a point to make related to district business, then you're within your right to acknowledge them to speak.
Okay, thank you. So we'll start to my far left and work our way right. Any commissioner that has a statement or a comment? Discussion?
I'm all set.
None at this time, thank you.
I just want to hear more of the discussion. Do we have contracts or something of that nature? Is that what?
No, we don't. We don't have no contracts. I just want to be clear, but I'll let the superintendent answer as well.
So when this was first brought to our attention, we did check to see if we had any open contracts or any contracts existing or had any contracts with CRC, and we did not. We do have contracts with Pathways to Peace, but named individuals are not the recipient of those funds for the contract.
We didn't name any individuals this evening, so. President? No, I haven't. Commissioner Santiago? Okay, we're all set.
No, I thought the Vice President.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Vice President LeBrun.
Yeah, I just want to put on the record that the Rochester City School District has no affiliation and has never worked with CRC. And if there were individuals who worked for CRC who in the past had worked inside the district, they worked under a different department or an organization like the City of Rochester. I do hope all of the groups, however, that you did name personally out here, instead of having a conversation in executive session, does take some litigation against a particular commissioner who named them. And I just want to put that on record, that this commissioner has nothing to do with that letter. I do not support it. And I also do not support the fact that we have a commissioner who doesn't understand how things work and wants to create or cast doubt in this community. We have enough doubt in this community with the district and this system. We don't need to create false narratives that RCSD is doing anything on any level with CRC and this whole ARPA scandal with the Monroe County, and how those legislators failed to do their part in their vote when they voted on this. So I just want to put that on the record. I just want to say I have nothing to do with this. This is this one particular individual. I'm not supporting it. And shout out to the city, because you're essentially asking the district to use taxpayer dollars and waste it on a fake audit, or an audit that doesn't need to happen because we don't have any contracts or affiliations with the ARPA scandal. Now, personally, for my job, I'm impacted, affected, and my team and the work that we do, that has nothing to do with RCSD. So I just want to put that on record. There's enough legal stuff swirling and enough taxpayer dollars already being wasted on this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. And as always, I'm respectful
Don't
of
need your
as always, I'm respectful of all my colleagues' comments, whether pro or con. But then again, we haven't performed a forensic audit, which is very detailed.
We don't need to do a forensic
excuse
audit
me,
on a
excuse me,
contract
excuse
that
me,
does
you were
not
done
exist.
speaking.
It is a
You were
waste of
done
taxpayer
speaking.
dollars.
You were done
That is what I'm
speaking.
trying to get through your thick skull. It's a waste
Oh
of
my
taxpayer
goodness.
dollars. We do not need a forensic audit on a contract that does not exist and never existed.
Order, please.
The district and CRC has never
Order,
had any
please.
type of contract
Commissioner-
or relationship.
Commissioner, respectfully.
Point blank, period.
Commissioner, respectfully, you should be recognized to speak. I think this
Adrian,
issue
I'm trying to respect the rules, especially for you, but it's just stupid, and I'm so sick and tired of
I
two
understand,
particular
Commissioner-
commissioners. I'm
Commissioner,
done
ad
with them.
hominem
It is
attacks are
stupid.
out
It
of
is
order.
stupid.
Right. Ad hominem attacks are out of order. You can address an issue, but it should not be directed at an individual. My recommendation is to move on to the subject on the agenda.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Let's see, the next item on our agenda is a review of the audit reports from the Auditor General. In the interest of time, we will limit commissioners to 2 questions, please, each. Your remaining questions should be placed in the question log. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it over to Anissa.
Thank you. We have 2 reports to review tonight. We'll start off with the transportation audit. At a high level, I want it to be understood that our transportation department is providing transportation to 26,797 students on more than 1,154 buses daily. So it's a considerable, you can't hear me loud enough? I'll put it closer. I can't get closer. Unfortunately, this cord, is that a little better? Okay, so I'll just lean forward. So we're a considerable sized operation. I also want to note that the transportation department includes a bus garage where all vehicles are maintained, district-owned 180 vehicles, and 72 school buses. So a lot of the routes that are taking place, we have third-party vendors doing those services for us. To get a handle on the spend in the full year 22-23 was $75 million in expense. Our scope of work was to really take a look at transportation, the monitoring, evaluating bus maintenance processes, fuel inventory, the work order system, looking at the fleet, the supervision, as well as driver safety-related items. Our first recommendation, which frequently does happen in the various operating areas, there's always an opportunity to improve protocols and procedures to ensure they are current to reflect current processes, and we're encouraging this to take place in transportation. There were certainly some items written, they just all were not current to reflect current activities that were going on in the shop. The next recommendation talks about route delays, which is plaguing most school districts actually with the bus driver shortage. But specifically as it relates to our district, we were looking at the data that was available, and we noticed that we do have a process for transportation vendors to identify when they're going to be late. Within our system, we have a place where they kind of put a note what route and how late they're anticipating that route will be. And we really want to make sure that there is encouragement of being able to analyze that data and facilitate some monitoring to determine if there's certain patterns that we can remediate. We did note in February 2024, although there were 16 school days because it was a shorter month with the recess, there were still 26 occasions where a bus was at least 2 hours late and 1 where a bus was expected to be 3 hours late. We haven't, at this point, made any significant changes to our bell times, but there are some schools taken offline, so I do want to put that under the restructure. Our second recommendation is to make sure we have a format for vendors to report these delays to facilitate our monitoring and make sure we take a look at what we can do to improve the routes. Our third recommendation is to, the administration has been working with various individual groups, and we're really looking for those groups to work collectively to talk about some of the possible changes that can happen internally to improve transportation. One area, and we identified a couple of items and made a few recommendations, but there are a few areas such as the number of routes that are there. I know school bell times does possibly impact that. In addition, what transportation policy exceptions we allow, And we noted even the amount of special transportation for students with disabilities. We're not suggesting that individual needs are not met, but we did note, looking at the data that was available, apparently approximately 54% of the students with disabilities had special transportation, and of that percentage, approximately 91% of those students have a house pickup. And we're just wondering how we can look at our internal processes and make changes, and see if there's a way to decrease the need and see if that might help us with these delays. The next area was looking at the various contracts associated with transportation. We have 3 major vendors we're doing work with, well, actually 4. And generally speaking, we really want to make sure, while there is monitoring that's definitely taking place, we're looking to enhance in those various areas to make sure that we're following all detailed regulations. Usually, our contractors is well within our contracts, that there's plenty of monitoring taking place for our drivers, et cetera. But we just want to make sure that there's clear compliance, it's documented, and very, very consistent. We certainly do monitor our drivers. We just wanted to formalize that process and streamline it a little bit better. Under billing and fuel allocation, there's considerable manual intervention to try to deal with matters such as late buses and different challenges that happen within the regular course of transportation. For that reason, under the billing and fuel allocation process, we're really looking for some more automation so that there's not any manual intervention or very limited manual intervention, and also ensuring that the fuel allocations, we generally provide fuels for our carriers. We want to make sure that the methodology utilized is contractually documented. In inventory, while it wasn't significant dollars, we want to ensure that we limit our parts inventory to readily used items, that we have adequate safeguard controls on the parts that are in our parts inventory, and we're usually using a ticket or some sort of mechanism to relieve our inventory and keep close count on that. So we're looking for safeguarding the inventory controls and making sure that our system reflects current numbers. We also are encouraging cycle counts so that we can ensure that our inventory remains current and accurate. And we also want to make sure an annual inventory is performed and adjustments made to our online system. For fixed assets, usually as of the end of the year, we certainly do verify and true up for our year-end financial records, but we wanted to improve the process during the year to ensure any changes that take place are happening and there's greater communication between transportation and accounting for changes in our fixed assets. That would cover disposals, acquisitions, et cetera. Our next point is our driver listings. We actually are looking at the driver's listings by the Department of Transportation. There is a certain roster that is maintained, and the importance of that is to ensure that we're able to make sure that is completely reconciled and we can clearly see everyone who would possibly be used as driving a bus. Sometimes we use maybe a maintenance mechanic or other individuals who might back up for positions. We want to ensure everyone who can possibly be a bus driver for our district is included in the random drug testing and other procedures. Even though they're not regular drivers, it's just a best practice. Looking at the bus drivers, we wanted to ensure that any complaints that are logged, this can be something as easy as we don't like where this particular bus stop is located or whatever, or that someone was driving quickly, or any type of items that could happen within the course of the day. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's relating to behavior, but we want to make sure that we have a better complaint process so that we're tracking data and information effectively. So we're really looking to have a database to log complaints so we can look at trends and help and support our drivers to perform at the level that we anticipate and expect them to operate, and make sure that we are proactively dealing with any driver discipline-related items if there are any driver infractions. As it relates to accidents, we wanted to ensure that there is a formal process and we're really clear about what certain behaviors are disallowed or not acceptable. There was previously a very clear process where you'd get certain points, or there was a point system for the drivers to identify this is the outcome and this is the potential consequence for certain behaviors. We had stopped using that system, and we just wanted to encourage that we track appropriately anything that's happening as it relates to driver accidents, and there's some clarity around that. Under student safety, we have a very dated student protocol under student discipline. It hasn't been updated since 2017. And understanding that, we want to make sure that we're taking a look at those protocols and ensuring that they reflect our current code, as well as exactly what behaviors are necessary as it relates to student safety. So we really wanted to make sure also that the drills are properly tracked. And so there is a requirement that a certain number of drills happens on each route. And for that reason, we want to ensure that we're seeing that tracking and that log by route, and that consistently happens. There's also the recommendation to update our protocols, make sure that the discipline is progressive and appropriate based on the student's age, IEP, et cetera. In addition, our point is simply that we want to make sure that there's fair and equitable treatment across the board, and in the event we need to make an exception, that is documented. Our last recommendation is surrounding monitoring. We really want to make sure that we have student behavior that's effectively monitored, that we have a system that is going to document it, that we can clearly run reports and look at trends and different things that are happening on our buses to ensure a safe transportation for all. That concludes this report.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for any questions from any of my colleagues. Once again, starting from the right this time. The state's independent monitor, do you have any questions?
No, this time.
Right. And Commissioner Santiago?
No, just hoping that the administration does extensively look at this audit report and really tackle some of these issues that were listed on this audit report.
Superintendent? Nothing. President Elliott?
No question.
Vice President LeBron?
No.
Commissioner Simmons?
No real questions, just, yeah, similar to what Commissioner Santiago stated, just wrapping around the protocols and student placement. It's historically not been successful, and with this reconfiguration coming up, we want to, make sure that it is, and so demonstrating that'll be pivotal.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Commissioner Simmons, everything you said, thank you, but no other comments at this time.
I'm all set.
And just back to myself, going through this report, just a few things that I'd like to highlight. When it talks about, let's see, go to page 3. It talks about safeguarding parts and inventory. We do have an inventory clerk, parts clerk, but it appears that at times individuals are still allowed to, go into these areas, and there's no accountability. It says that on page 12 that although there is a parts clerk, the position is vacant. So, I guess it's a statement toward the superintendent. We should really either look, I'm always trying to come with solutions. So we should either look to fill that position, quickly, or put someone in it part-time. So, it cuts down any thought of, theft or just not doing a proper inventory, of parts and things like that. Same thing with getting rid of parts that we no longer utilize. If we could probably sell those off a little bit quicker, and that those parts still be utilized. Whereas if we sit on these parts, those cars really become obsolete, and those parts, we're not able to sell those, to make, money. So just, ideas. Let's see here. And then just more effective monitoring, of our drivers. And I'll leave that at that. talks about on page 19, a formal discipline process for drivers. So we need to really look into that. I know there's recommendations that Audit has come up with, and hopefully, we're moving, toward those recommendations. Let's see, so just some notes that I took here. It's a large document, so I'm going to leave some questions for the question log because it's such a large document. But those are just a few things that I wanted to bring or draw to your attention. Yes, Commissioner Santiago.
One question to the superintendent. With the reconfiguration plan coming up, how is this going to affect our transportation? Is it going to cause more of a strain, or is this going to be helpful towards our district when it comes to transportation?
So, part of the reconfiguration has us zoning in elementary and middle school. So over time, it will have an impact in terms of helping be more efficient in transportation. So we didn't rezone the whole district. We rezoned the students that were changing schools or going to a new school. So it will begin to help. But as we continue to stay and maintain zones, that's why it's really important that we're consistent with that. That will help become more efficient with our transportation.
And Superintendent, I'm sorry to my colleagues. One more question on page number 7. It talks about 16 days, yet there are over 1,000 late bus communications, generally ranging from 15 minutes to 3 hours. And we noted 26 occasions where the bus was at least 2 hours late, and one instance where the bus expected to be there 3 hours late. Could you just speak to that a little bit if you can?
Yeah, I think, part of being a district that serves, I think if we saw in that first slide, the 26,790 students, 1,100 bus runs every day to across a multitude of districts, including what we do for urban suburban, what we do for charter, what we do for private. We're stretched thin, and we're seeing what we're seeing across the country around busing. This is part of becoming more efficient in organization. This was one of the reasons why reorganization was really important, so that we could begin to address our footprint and how we're able to deliver services. So, the bus shortage and the bus driver shortage is a real issue that we're all struggling with. And so if people call in sick, or we have a couple of people go out, that's going to cause longer delays.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Santiago asked, could he ask one more question or requested?
You kind of already touched on it, so you don't really have to say much more. But I was going to ask, when you say that we're stretched thin, are you saying on a financial basis or on a worker basis? And it sounded like you said just
On the labor component of it, we get reimbursed for transportation. We have one of our legislative priorities to even reimburse less than a mile and a half. So we want to provide students as much transportation as possible. But when we're traveling all over the city, we have students that live in different parts that go miles and miles away from their schools. It's more about the labor and getting drivers.
Thank you very much. And we can continue.
Thank you.
There's no further questions.
The next report is Student Equity and Placement Review. You'll also see that as SEP, just to make sure that that brings some clarity. I just wanted to touch upon kind of the reporting process. This was originally the first one, but I do want to make sure that I publicly state, we do work with operating management to make sure that we're collaborative in the process. At the end of the audit, we review the findings, the observation, recommendations with operating management, usually more than once, actually going back and forth to ensure that there is an action that addresses the risk. We do work to make sure that there's an understanding of whatever control concerns are presented, and the corrective actions that are identified are management's commitment to address the issue and be accountable for those issues, as well as the time frame in which they can be done. So I will note both for transportation, which we've already read, as well as for this particular report, management has already started with making some of the corrections in their operating process, so I did want to just put that out there. So the background for the student placement audit really was around the fact that we have this restructuring going on. The reconfiguration has the risk or the potential that there could be a considerable need in the Office of Placement. For that reason, I just wanted, we did a mini review just to ensure we would assess and see if there could be efficiencies found in the event that there is a higher volume in that particular department. In case you didn't know, student registration is required for all students in the city of Rochester, including private, parochial, and charter, because they have to have their transportation orders inside of the system, and we need to know and be able to account for all of our students. In addition, preschool students transitioning to kindergarten also are required to register. One thing that was different this past year was online enrollment was almost exclusively used in the 23-4 year, so it was a little different, whereas in prior periods, we did allow much more paper. And for that reason, it made it a little bit more difficult. So families are entering their registration information online. They're uploading documents like birth certificates and IDs, and that is generally the placement process. Once all docs are complete, they then go through our placement process. So I just wanted to offer that background. So again, it was a limited review, and we did try to look at a number of sources to try to see how we're operating, to see if we could support management as it related to efficiencies. Within, as of approximately the time of us starting this review, there was a change for the director of that function. The student placement director was new as of this audit, so that did make a little change. Also, most recently, upon the ending of this particular audit, Deputy Turner also has changed kind of the structure of the function, so it is more directly to her. Versus coming through two different functions. So this will report directly to her for greater visibility in this important area. So that is a recent change that is taking place as well. Moving on to the first recommendation, protocols and procedures. There were some changes, and there was the intent to have automation. As a result, whatever procedures that did exist needed to be updated to reflect the current processes, and that is generally the recommendation that is put forth. The process itself kind of was a fractured automated process because there were some prior paper-type processes, and then there was some automation that was there, and then there was kind of a sub-process that it was there. And so there was a difficulty in having a smooth flow for the entire process. I think the team was really working hard to embrace the new system, but it hadn't fully embraced in what their processes would be. So when you look at the recommendations, we really want to minimize some efficiencies and re-engineer the process to make it a seamless process. We want to make sure that we are clear about who should do what where, what tasks should be completed before moving to the next person. Something as simple as when parents are in person, making sure that we verify their documents before they leave. Those types of things we want to make sure is put in to decrease the cycle time, because that is a real need in that particular process. Under roles and responsibilities, it kind of goes with the process, but we really want to make sure we define very clearly what the roles are, which the skill sets needed are there. I know at the district we frequently, because we're operating in a civil service environment, sometimes there's generic titles and it doesn't really specify what the job is. For example, a clerk 1 that might sit in student placement might be different than a clerk 1 that would sit in special education. So we want to make sure we document exactly what the expected activities are for a particular role and ensure that they have the appropriate skill set to do those roles. So we really want to clearly define the responsibilities for everyone, and that would allow us to be a little more, hold people more accountable, because we'll know exactly what role should be done by whom, and that'll improve some monitoring. Then we have a resource issue. Generally and annually, we usually do have this opportunity kind of late summer where we do see a lot of families. We make efforts to try to encourage things like lotteries and other activities so that we don't get to this last minute crunch that happens right before schools open or shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, this keeps happening, and management is working on trying to find ways to make that a little bit better. But because we know that there are high volume times and we can actually staff, we can't staff for high volume times because that's not the norm. And so we want to ensure that our processes have a plan so that we have resources to address what is the right level of staffing, what is the position, what is the skill set, who do we dedicate for inline enrollment when people online actually apply versus people who come in person, because sometimes what was happening is the people who are in front of you, they seem more urgent. So we want to make sure that there's fairness and equity in that process. In addition, there's temporary resources that's utilized from other departments that come and help. We want to be clear, what tasks do we allow them to do? And we want to make sure that is very clear, defined, documented, so we're not in a position where the help comes in and it throws our process off because they're in the middle of a process that needs to move in a smooth manner. Perhaps we give them things such as some of the parent interaction type roles that would not interfere with our process. The next area is the Power School enrollment system. This is the automated system. It does interface it does interface with our Power School student management system. There are some tasks necessary to make that happen. And we really just want to make sure that we actually operate the process using the system. So we generally have been managing a lot of pieces outside of the system without appreciating how the system truly works. And a lot of the reason for that is possibly all of the staff that currently exists is not trained in that particular area. So what we're encouraging is training from the Power School organization to really understand the functionality and redesign our process to work with the functionality. We also want to make sure that we simplify things for parents so that, if you allow a parent to submit information that's incomplete, they think they're done. They may not realize they're not done. So one of the things which, as I understand, it has been updated as of the end of this audit, where they were changing so that only required forms they can't submit if the required forms are not there. That is going to assist us in the follow-up process. So that is like a really big point. There's also some reporting or flags that are built into the system to allow us to monitor certain things, and some automation that's built into the system. Once we end up using that process with Fidelity, it's going to afford us an opportunity to use some of the bells and whistles built into the system for monitoring, for follow-up. It really will help. It also has document storage built into the system. And so document storage would allow us to put the records inside of the Power School system, and some can push into the student management system. Instead, we're using a network drive, which then would not interface in the same manner. That is it for that. The next one is Google Sheets. We seem to have a real like for Google Sheets at the district. And so they're utilized in this system, and most of our process is truly managed through Google Sheets, multiple very fancy Google Sheets that I think are a means to address needs of the organization, but probably isn't the most effective way if we have an actual system. So we really want to make sure that to the extent there's reporting needs, that we're dealing with the vendors and they're meeting those needs, and we're not trying to do Google Sheets because you have data integrity issues associated with creating a Google Sheet, and sensitive fields are not even protected in this particular sheet, which makes it very difficult because then you can break or harm the sheet and it can't be used by others once you do corrupt that sheet. So we're really looking for management to work with the vendor and eliminate the use of Google Sheets in the process. The very last item in this particular area comes around monitoring. I think once we are operating using our systems, identifying the reports that we need, and we're identifying what everyone should do, we will be in a position to appropriately monitor how students are moving through our process and our system, and it also allows us to improve efficiency and hold individuals accountable for a timely placement, which would deliver greater service to our families.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for any discussion. I'm going to begin with myself. Excuse me. I'm going to draw your attention to page 5 of the PowerPoint. Talks about operating leadership change. Correct. Thank you. It says a new director, SEP, was appointed September of 2023 amid significant operating challenges. Given the timing of this transition and the high turnover in placement staff, there are limited knowledge of all operating practices. It goes on down to indicate that a new executive director of registration position will focus exclusively on placement activities instead of reporting through the executive director of student accountability and student registration. So, first and foremost, I will not be voting for any new positions at this point in time, and I've been very vocal, very transparent relative to that. We're down over 10,000 students, but we're still creating these positions in the administration that are high-level, high-paying jobs. When individuals, they take on these positions, and they're expected to do these things, but then they want the district to hire individuals to support them or do the work that they should be doing. So for me, I'm going to be voting against anything that has anything to do with a new hire, unless it's someone that is, working in an area where there's support, for registration and things of that nature. But anything in either the cabinet, which I've been very vocal and transparent with the superintendent, I will not be voting, for anything like this. And this administration has to learn to work within what it has and what we have. I think we have very bright, very intelligent individuals that are working for us, and I think we're just not utilizing them in the way, shape, and form that we should. So I'm going to open it up to discussion, starting with the State Independent Monitor, if he wants to say anything. Not at this time. Okay. And Commissioner Santiago, and we can move to my left.
I just want to say that this is something that that just like I said with the last presentation, I hope that these recommendations are taken into consideration and that placement is fixed on the things that were listed.
President Elliott?
No comment.
Commissioner Simmons?
Yes, thank you. So, starting with slide number 3, you may have touched on this. I think, Anissa, you were reading this part, and there's a final bullet under background, and it's saying families must enter information online, upload documentation, da-da-da-da. If information is incomplete, that they will not be enrolled. Wondering if what has been done to create an automated prompt for families, because I think I actually encountered that at this last enrollment. Someone thought that all the information was there, or it was, and because of the Google Sheets that you mentioned, we'll go there in a second, things were displaced, they couldn't find it, and so this child ultimately was not enrolled in school in the time in which they should have been because information, but had they gotten that prompt, that there was a discrepancy. So have we fixed that? What's going on with that?
So I'll have Deputy Superintendent Turner talk a little bit about, what it is. Yes, and if there is not a prompt, right, there needs to be systems in place to ensure that people are going through and seeing what is not complete and following up with families. But I know that we've been working with Power School, and I'll turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Turner.
Can I just add? So initially, when we did the audit, there was a backlog, so the timing of the follow-up was a struggle. The change that was implemented that won't allow the submission will then have parents see you need a birth certificate. So then they're not able to submit and think that they're done. Since the system's capable of identifying when something's incomplete, it makes it that much easier for our limited staff then to say, good, I can start with a complete set of documents and now I can move forward. So it became so overwhelming to try to follow up with all the different things that were not there. And these were things as simple as, it's a birth certificate, but I put my ID in that spot again. So when you think you had everything, it's not until you get to that record and you find out, uh-oh, and now you're going back and they're following up. And it was not an easy process to follow up. Sometimes people transposed their phone number, did not answer the call, did not follow up. So there were lots of difficulties associated with that. So it's been addressed by that change.
Okay, so if I'm going online, meaning I probably have some form of email capability and things of that nature, will I get an email? Will I get something I will get that will communicate to me, thanks, Commissioner Simmons, but we're missing your birth certificate. You're not enrolled and we need it by this time, so that I can So I'll get that communication.
Yeah, it will not let you submit, whereas before, we did not have that safeguard. So
Okay.
a person would hit submit and make the assumption that because I was able to submit, and I mentioned this before when we did the review of issues that we were experiencing.
Right.
So now, even if you don't, like, before you can put your phone number and miss one digit, now it's formatted so that those things, almost like, when you go on the red line and it doesn't let you, it'll say, go correct this red line.
Okay.
And this is stuff that I mentioned months ago when we realized, right, the need down there, that we were investigating and looking at a system
Right.
that will allow us to do this. So I want to be clear that as useful as Anissa's office and this audit was, a lot of this stuff was in the works before we even knew the results of the audit, which was a commitment that we made. And one of the things that I shared and received with the support of the board at that time is that we are restructuring because we have to.
Right.
Okay, we have to. In order to provide quality services to our families, we're restructuring how that department operates and the function of that department so that we do not have, because what we end up doing is spending more money because then we have these issues that we then have to address in the moment. So we are in working with our Power School Complete Enrollment. They're providing the training. We're training staff now. We're cross-training folks. So in those moments where we have a high volume and need extra people, we're not necessarily hiring them permanently, but we're cross-training and utilizing those folks to then come and support those high-need months in which we have a lot of families who often will wait to the last minute to register or to re-enroll back to the district.
Yeah, and I remember us having a conversation. I couldn't remember the details of that one, but I remember it stood out last time. Seeing it again in the audit, I was like, let me just make sure I put that out there. And thank you for your response, both of you. So that was slide 3. The Google Docs, I'm so happy to hear that that's something that we're mediating and doing away with. I could see it as a good internal function or something for checks and balances on the side, but not as a standard. So I'm glad that is being looked at. And then lastly, I think it was slide 15, in regards to the executive director position, I don't know if that's where it was, but I think it actually makes sense to me when I'm thinking about what I understand around student placement. It wasn't slide 15. Y'all know where it is. Slide 5, thank you. In regard to the executive director position, because if I'm thinking about this right, we have about 20,000 students, give or take, maybe a little more now, because we've got some charter kids that just came back in, an influx of them, actually.
But we also in some support even those kids in charter schools. So I want us
We're
to remember
supporting
that
the
too.
charter placement piece too? Okay, so that's our 20,000 plus how many about charter schools are we supporting in that function as far as placement? Just a rough estimate. About another 6,000, so almost 30,000 students. To getting to the point, this department has been historically short-staffed from what I understood, and that was part of the issue. And so I understand efficiencies need to be set up to improve those outcomes, but we also need to make sure staffing is in place. And I think with, I know I couldn't manage 30,000 students or 26,000 students with just a handful of staff. So it might make sense. Help me understand.
So yes, a very good point. I would say that if you watch placement, especially when it starts to get busy, we have a lot of people working really hard down there, but we only have one decision maker. So everything, what you'll see is early on a line at a door for
I've
the,
seen it.
for the, right?
that's why I know you
For
need
the
it.
decision maker to make that decision moving forward. So, there's a couple of things in this change here. It is a reporting structure for who the executive director reports to, as well as, so that there's a quicker response versus having from a director to report to an executive director, then going to the deputy superintendent. The executive directors could immediately go to the deputy superintendent from a reporting structure as well. So there's multiple purposes of this, but we have a lot of people working really hard down there, doing really good work, but we only have one decision maker, and we really want to make sure that we're putting into systems in place that don't rely heavily on just a single person making that decision.
Yeah, so, don't get me wrong, I do agree with Commissioner Patterson on some points as far as there are spaces where I'm sure we could look at some staffing and do we need this position? For this particular department, I personally think that we may need to look at that for sure. But we might want to look at where we can lean out as well. Thank you.
May I add one thing to that? So as it relates to that executive director role, the current environment has 2 directors plus 1 associate director. The associate director rolls up through special ed, and the 2 directors separately report into the executive director of accountability. So with this restructure, the 1 executive director in the shop has all 3 reporting into that person. So when a decision's made from a placement perspective, all of the placement-related decision makers are together making that decision. So that actually is an improvement.
So you're saying right now, I'm sorry, you're saying right now there's 2 directors or executive directors already?
There's just 2 directors. There's a director of the language assessment piece, there's a director of student placement, and then there's an associate director of student with disabilities.
So you have 2 directors at this point in time and what was the other one?
Associate
An
director.
associate, and that's not enough from what I'm hearing here to,
yes, it's- I'm sorry, go ahead.
to direct that the staff, be able to do its work. For me, it would be better training and delegating. If rather than hire a person for 6 digits, why don't we put more staff down there on the ground to do these things? I don't see any reason for another piece of supervision.
So, go ahead. Is that, you want me?
I can,
Go ahead.
okay, I'll be more than happy to respond. So it's a bit more complicated than that. We are actually understaffed in our language assessment department. We can share the data with you of how many families, just that, when you think of that director has a full-time job just doing the language assessment piece. Okay, so I don't want you to think that everybody is like doing student registration, right? So it's under the umbrella of student registration, but she has a portion of that is more than, she puts in more than the 40 hours a week with the volume of students. We have 1,400 new registrants that need the language assessment support. Last year, this time, we only had 1,000. Okay, so the sheer volume of the work, these folks are not down there, not doing anything. So in her department, that language piece keeps them more than occupied. So they're not directly doing the student registration, whereas our director of student registration is working with those registrants as they come to register, and placement, voluntary transfers, safety transfers, all that. And the SPED individual who's not even 12 months, so this is part of the need to restructure and align it better. That person is not 12 months. That person is doing all the special education, getting the IEPs from the different, when I tell you as best as I can, these folks are working every minute of the day. What we're trying to do is work smarter and provide better customer service for our families. And we were very thoughtful in doing that, in giving up positions, right, in order to realign and reorganize. And we're very much mindful of not to put additional financial burden on the district. But I stand on every fiber of my character to say this is a necessary avenue in order for us to drastically improve how we're operating down there for the betterment of our families and their experiences, and to be able to get students in the right placement as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Thank you. I want to make sure we get to all the commissioners if they have a question. So if you want to.
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate this healthy conversation, and I'm learning a lot in the process. I think that it's important for us to ask about the efficiencies across our district, and certainly that's our job as board members, is to make sure that we're being responsible in that regard. And yeah, I too was concerned to see the addition of increased or additional central office positions. But so it was really nice to have that explanation. So thank you so much, Chief Turner, for providing that. I think there is a perception in the community at times that we're just continuing to add to central office, and it's just a lot of beef downtown. But these are questions that we have to ask as commissioners. And so I do appreciate that Commissioner Patterson brought up that concern. And perhaps moving forward, when there are, we can have an explanation given to us up front so that it doesn't reach the dais first, so that we know, or it's included in the presentation with like maybe a justification.
Right,
or-
and so I just want to, sorry, Commissioner, can I respond quick? Yep, thank you. So, you know, what I want to look at it from a lens of, this is a report that was given to us, right, to say, how could we improve placement? One of the recommendations here may be to add more supports to placement. That doesn't mean that we're adding and not looking at other places for efficiencies. So what the board's, I'm hoping, their guidance to me is, it looks like placement needs some more support. Support placement, but not at the cost of the whole district in terms of adding on, right? And those are the things that we have to work from. That's why we do these. That's why we do these in transportation. That's why we do these in placement, to become better and more efficient and provide supports where we need them to be. I think from my ask is that if that's a place where they're seeing we need support, that you charge the superintendent and the team to provide the support there, but not at the sacrifice of adding positions to the whole system.
Yeah, yeah. So that was just the first,
Hold on.
yeah.
Thank you, sir. Hold on, let me jump to Commissioner Griffin, then I'll come back to Commissioner Simmons, and then back to you, Commissioner Malloy. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Patterson. I guess I have to piggyback off of the elephant in the room about the cost of hiring or putting this executive director in a position. I mean, I have to go back to my careers working in corporate America with $1 million companies and corporations, and I just never seen so many executive directors or directors in one umbrella in an organization, and some very successful in their own right. So when I look at this and I'm seeing all these directors and assistant directors, yes, this is an educational platform. I get it. But how many directors does it take to make something work? I guess I would beg to differ that if we could go in and have everybody making sure they're doing what their job description and making sure everybody's meeting the expectation that they were hired to do, that I think that we would see a better outcome in the department. Is everybody working their job efficiently and effectively versus hiring a director? I mean, you can hire a director, but the director is only as good as the director is given the responsibility and held accountable for being a director. So I have to agree with Commissioner Patterson. We don't need to hire anybody. We need to make people more accountable in the positions that they are holding within this district. So that is as far as with placement. Yeah, I believe that in placement, there probably is a need for lower level assistance hiring for them. But as in a director level or an associate director level, I don't see that. So that's just my take on it. I think we need to come off of having too many chiefs and Indians. We have too many in control, and I think we need to come back and have more positions available in placement that's going to be at the lower level to help the children. And my second thing I wanted just to address is how is the office appearing engaged in supporting the families in this effort to ensure that everything is going to go smoother than it was last year. And another question that's come up multiple times is that what we have is that the pre-K is not rolling up, and that a lot of kids have to come and be re-registered. How has that been addressed so that it's different from the way it was last year when people were registered and they had to re-register their children for kindergarten, and because a lot of kids came in because of that reason as well. So can you address that as well?
Okay. We're going to move on. The superintendent asked me, I'm sorry, could he reply to her? Is that okay with you, Camille? You were next, and then
Absolutely.
Amy?
Commissioner Simmons, sure.
So, no,
Commissioner Simmons, I'm sorry.
So there's a lot there, but the one thing I want to say is that I agree. We have to look at how we're structured here at central office, right? And so we, with the appreciation of the board, they passed us entering into a contract to evaluate how we're structured here centrally to best support our schools and then the jobs that are here at central office as well. Just like we're reorganizing schools, we have to look at central office. We're not a district of 35,000 students anymore like we were, right? We're far less. And we have to look at how we're organized to best support our families and best support our schools. We are conducting a study, and we hope to have this done by the end of the summer to kind of share results of what we're finding there. So I do agree with what you're saying, and I think we have to look at how we're structured and organized to support our schools and families.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Simmons?
Thank you.
And then I'm going to come to Commissioner Malloy, then back to Vice President LeBron, who I see has her hand up.
Okay, thank you again. So I love this audit because it does show the effort of figuring out our efficiencies. So we keep saying we need to figure out our efficiencies, and we've put an audit in place to figure out our efficiencies. So we're figuring them out, and I think there's gonna be continuous improvement around this. We're gonna need to continue to take a look at it, tweak, and see what makes sense. Sometimes you come up with a great idea, and as you go on, you realize maybe we need to tweak it or look at it a little differently. What was I gonna say? Commissioner Malloy, I think you said something really good about like there's a misunderstanding sometimes in the greater community. And it's so scary sometimes because you hear messaging go out without the understanding, without the comprehensive understanding of how the district works or districts in general. And it's miscommunication, and oftentimes you have community members responding to these miscommunications. And it's irresponsible, in my opinion. So I think that it's important that we are clear and concise. And to that end, Dr. Turner, I do like the idea of the explanation you were able to provide. And I think it might have been Commissioner Malloy or Griffin who asked for not so much an explanation, but it might be help for visual aid. I'm a visual person myself. So if we're looking at the different buckets of directors or what have you, what exactly they do, because what you spelled out really helped me to see it even more clearly. So having that visual would support our understanding.
That has certainly been, since the last time we were here a couple of months ago, my plan is once we have all those structures in place is to come back and share how we're restructuring and how we believe each of those will help better deliver services to our families. So that is certainly there as we begin to kind of, right now, we're in that main focus right now is training an Army to be able to understand this new system so that as families begin to register and so forth, we're ready efficiently to serve them. So we certainly will come back and then be able to share each of those respective roles and also caseload to give an idea of the sheer volume of the work that takes place in this department throughout the year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Malloy, and then up to Vice President.
Okay. All right.
After? Okay.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to say I really liked a lot of all these recommendations, and so thank you so much for this audit and providing us with this information. I especially liked recommendation number 5 on slide 9. So just clearly defining roles and responsibilities of these different job titles or providing us with job descriptions and explaining the functions that these people perform. I would like to see that for maybe all of our departments, and if that, I mean, that would be really educational for board members to have a clearer understanding, and would certainly curtail, I guess, some of the debates sometimes that we see between members. But yeah, having clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and the deliverables, not just for student equity and placement, but for all of our departments, would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to jump up to the screen for Vice President LeBron.
Yeah, I just want to also respond around the makeup of public education and the positions. And I just want to put out there, especially to the listening audience, that you really cannot take a corporate model and try to look at it from the lens of education and even higher education, because the titles are different. So government models are different from public education, and also corporate, and even from nonprofits. And so that's one piece, but I just also have to put this on the record because the conversation around people being ineffective at their jobs, and I just want to defend our staff and say that I know that, especially in placement and language access, that is not an easy job to do. So that's one. I want to thank the staff that do work tirelessly in those areas and departments. But three, it's almost like the hypocrisy and audacity of board members who don't know their jobs to try to give comment about staff doing the jobs that they do. It's just crazy to me. I just have to put that on record and make sure that I do my due diligence in supporting our staff as a board member. But also have to also state this on the record, because I feel like every year, especially since I've started in this district 20 years ago, there's always been the conversation around the roll-up for pre-K and kindergarten. And every time since I've been on this board, I try to remind the public that those are under two different sort of regulatory departments. Pre-K is managed by regulations under the Office of Children and Family Services for the listening audience and for the public. Is there things that the district can do to sort of ease? Absolutely. Can we figure out how to get one application? We have to do that at a state level where we talk to OCFS and the New York Department of Education and figure out how those two departments can figure out this rollout. Because certainly it is an issue because it hits up on our policies around zoning. But because OCFS allows families to select pre-K from anywhere, we cannot limit it. They're allowed to pick schools that are outside of their zone. And oftentimes families will naturally select a school or a pre-K program that is either closer to their job, more convenient for them, whatever the case may be. And when they go up to K, it's out of their zone. So that's where our policies come in. And unfortunately, that does impact a lot of families. It's not a new issue, but certainly I do think it would benefit us to have conversations with OCFS around that piece, but I will put it out there. I do not think they're going to change a regulation that impacts the entire state of New York, just for Rochester, New York. That's all.
President Elliott?
Thank you. So let me go to the Auditor General. You had made the statement that there were two positions that are that are different than the ones that were here. What was your intention of making that statement?
Not clear, are you talking
What were
about?
the positions that you said that there were there, and what was the intention of that statement? What was the intention of the statement?
So I was just trying to clarify that the elevation of the position that used to be the director over the placement function was really focused on just the placement function holistically, but there was although I must say give props to the two individuals, the placement director and the LAPC director, they do work well together, but they do both separately report into the current executive director. In addition, you have someone focused on special education, but they are not accountable to the person who's responsible for overall placement. So these three functions have to work together, but there's three different bodies of work that these three people do. And so what I was trying to clarify was the fact that they need to have a common vision and they need to work cohesively together. So for example, if the person who's just responsible for placement decided to change something in their process, you need the buy-in for the special ed person because how they receive information or students or things that are coming from the placement process may change and they have to be bought in and we have to make sure their needs are met. And it's not that these people can't work together, but it seems more cohesive if it's all under similar leadership. So I was just suggesting when I spoke to Deputy Turner as it related to this change, the intent was one, take the middleman out who's in a completely different function before she gets information, and she says, no, I'm on top of this myself. And so that was the first step by taking a level of management out, but also making sure that they're all together trying to move this agenda forward.
All right, so with these new positions, and I'll go to the superintendent, to deputy superintendent, this is going to make the ability to be able to have an effective placement department far more effective. I want to get that on the record because there has been, since I've been here, placement has been an issue. And so whatever we can do, we may not want to spend the money in this area, but we have to spend the money in this area if we want it to be effective. And so I'm supporting it. and I think you've got people who are going to support this. And let me just also say before I turn it over to the superintendent and the deputy superintendent, we got to make sure that we're helping to support to the vice president's point. We've got to make sure that we are supporting our district. We got to do that. We're talking about we want change, but there seems to be, this kind of resistance. Well, that's not going to help us. And I understand if asking questions and asking them, but I would recommend that these questions be asked in the line of which that we want to try to support the superintendent and his staff. We've got to move forward. We cannot go backwards. And so while these questions just come across as, and this is just me, as antagonistic and not very supportive of our district. At some point, we have to trust and we have to verify. But I think that, do we like spending money? Do we like doing this? This district has been in a mess for decades. What we're trying to do now is bring it up and elevate it so that we can educate our children in this community and that we could bring back students from these other schools because we have not done our due diligence by educating them. We're developing the groundwork here. We're developing the foundation. And so I'm asking that we are supportive of our district in order to be able to elevate the academic achievement of our students and the relationship that we have with our community and with our families. And so it just seems that and I understand that we have to ask questions, but it just seems that there is this tension where where some of us don't want to work together, are not working together, and we've got to change that. Dr. Peluso?
Thank you. So I just wanted to add, does this change placement? Does it help placement? This process, well, obviously, it wouldn't have been a recommendation if the Auditor General didn't believe it was going to assist and help placement, right? Once again, I'm with us saying that we've had declining enrollment, that we have to look at what our placement, look at how we're organized. But I do think there's times where we have to fluctuate and put resources where resources are needed, right? And we have to look at other places to make some other tough decisions as well. What we're finding is for placement, we have to be strategic to make sure that we're putting resources there, especially when we know it's going to be a difficult year coming on. We're through a reconfiguration. We know from past experiences that people make selections late, right? All of those things, we want to make sure that we're getting ahead of this as we move forward. So, I look at these as recommendations for us to better our processes. I don't look at these as recommendations to do on top of everything else we're doing.
Thank you. And just, I'm going to close here. If anyone has any additional questions, please hold them and put them in the question log. As long as everyone had 2 questions apiece, I want to be respectful, toward the other commissioners in the room. And I just want to close here with stating that oftentimes the work is done, on the ground. And from speaking to our employees and people that work for the district that are doing that work, they ask for additional help on the ground. They don't need another supervisor, a director, executive superintendent, executive director. They're asking for help, boots on the ground. And if you're doing proper training, I work for a large organization. And yes, organizations or organizational management is similar. And when I worked for the state police, when a major came to the scene, he expected his captains, his lieutenant, and especially the troopers to know their job and what to do without being told to do it, because we were well-trained. And I think it goes back to professional development and training. We have these new processes that we're dealing with here, the recommendations that the Auditor General has put forth. And if we follow her recommendations, I see no reason why we can't be successful without hiring another individual in this administration. So that's just my ending statement. No disrespect to anyone. I think that every commissioner has the right to voice their opinion and should be respected for that. But let's close this meeting out. I think, unless we have something else. Oh, that's right, executive session.
You have a motion first to forward the reports.
All right, let me find it here. All right, can I have a motion to accept?
Motion. I'm sorry.
Who was that?
A motion to accept and forward the student equity and placement report and transportation report to the March 28th business meeting, and that will be Commissioner Griffin,
Second?
second by Commissioner Malloy. Any comments or questions?
No.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Let's see here. The Auditor General update. The Auditor General has a, take that back because we went out of order here.
I actually do have a quick update. I just want to make sure there's no objection that I am submitting the paperwork for our claims auditors for another year. And if you need to discuss performance you'd have to do that in executive session. But I just want to make sure there's no objection. I notice, as you interact with them, there is no concern. So I will be forwarding documentation. Please advise if there's any concerns to me under separate cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. Let's see, the executive session. Before we recess into executive session, I'm requesting that commissioners complete the meeting survey. We will end the meeting from downstairs. The executive session is to discuss matters permitted by Section 105 of the Open Meetings Law or to receive advice and counsel from the General Counsel. Can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion?
Malloy and
Motion.
Commissioner Griffin. Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any discussion? Thank you.